A grand jury has recently decided not to charge a Georgia state trooper in the shooting death of a black man. Let me give you some background to this. A grand jury has declined to indict a former Georgia state trooper who shot and killed a black man last year after trying to pull him over for a broken taillight. Okay, this was just a broken taillight. Jacob Thompson, who worked for the Georgia State Patrol, had been arrested on charges of felony murder and aggravated assault in the August 7th death of 60-year-old Julian Lewis. That's your background. The state trooper, let's put his picture up. The state trooper was arrested for felony murder. Now it takes a lot to arrest a state police officer for felony murder. Let me give you some background to what happened. Mr. Lewis, Julian Lewis, had a broken tail light. The cop, Jacob Thompson, he gets behind him, he chases him, and this car ends up in a ditch, all right? So Mr. Julian Lewis ends up in a ditch, 60 years old. He's in the ditch and he gets shot in the head. They kill him. This cop kills him while his car is trapped in a ditch. Well, the forensic team, they come. Now, obviously, they're already biased. They say, okay, there's no way in the world our guy committed murder here. So let's look at the evidence, make sure we exonerate our guy. They looked at the evidence. Not only did they arrest him for felony murder, the state trooper division, they did their own investigation and they fired him. They said, you gotta go. You know why? Because they thought he committed murder too. Here's why they thought he committed murder. Because in the police report, this state trooper said that the reason he shot this 60-year-old black man and killed him is because while in the ditch, he was revving his car, trying to get out of the ditch, and he was in fear for his life. He believed that this car was going to impact him and kill him. The GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, testified that there's no way that scenario was possible because upon impact in the ditch, the black man who was murdered, his battery was dislodged. The car wasn't even working, nor could it work. They arrest him, charge him with felony murder. Now it goes to the jury. You know, those grand jury proceedings, top secret. We don't know how this case was presented to the grand jury. We don't know what evidence was presented to that grand jury. But with all of that, with an arrest being made for felony murder, with the state troopers doing their own investigation, saying this guy is not a good apple, he has to go. With all of the evidence of the GBI even saying there's no way this man put the trooper's life in danger, he was still not indicted for felony murder. The family's lawyer, Francis Johnson, who's the former president of the Georgia NAACP, called on the district attorney's office to try again. It was a runaway grand jury, he said. We think it was set on a track to run away by forces that never wanted to see Jacob Gordon Thompson prosecuted in the first place. Ben?
You said something in there that about the indictment process here, the grand jury process here in the state of Georgia, and in particular how we don't know how the evidence was presented to the grand jury. We've seen recently where it is really dependent on with the Breonna Taylor case. We saw Daniel Cameron made sure that that grand jury did not get the data that they needed, the actual information that they needed, but yet he came out and swore that we had justice in the case of Breonna Taylor. Speaking of Daniel Cameron in Kentucky. Then I'm reminded of Bill McCullough in Ferguson, Missouri, who after everything came out about the Mike Brown case, it also came out that as he presented evidence to the grand jury, he knowingly put up someone that he knew was lying, a witness that he knew was lying. I bring those two examples up because we've seen time and again in this country how prosecutors and district attorneys and county attorneys, they play a role and they facilitate a role that's always in favor of the police officer when it comes down to investigating themselves and getting justice for people who have been killed or assaulted by police officers. And I fear that this is what has happened again because of everything that you've outlined in this case and everything that I've heard about and read about this case. The fact that this state cannot hold this trooper accountable when the evidence is this ridiculous, to me, it suggests that we have yet another Bill McCullough incident going on, another Daniel Cameron going on, and we simply just have to wait and see because, like you said, there's no transparency in this process.
Right, the grand jury process needs to be reformed. So not only is there no transparency in the process, it's actually illegal for members of the grand jury to share information that they receive. So likely many of these grand jury members, Ben, they will come out of this grand jury proceeding and they will say, wait a minute, we didn't know about that. We didn't know about this information. This wasn't presented to us. And by statute, by law, Ben, they are unable to raise their hand and say to anybody, something is not right because we were presented a different set of facts than what is known to the general public. If we would have known what you know, we would have absolutely indicted this officer. But we won't know that because it is illegal unless a judge allows them to have a variance to that law.
May I make a quick recommendation? Ken Klippenstein, who's a friend of TYT and friend of mine, he's really great at handling whistleblower information if there's somebody who wants to be a whistleblower here.
Well, brother, we are working on it, man. I do know both of the attorneys who are involved. If somebody wants to contact us and be a whistleblower, we protect our sources here.